The twin moons of Kael'thor Prime once rose over golden spires and roaring arenas where warriors battled not for death but for glory, for the right to recite their ancestors' names before the sacred flame. Their songs once echoed through the galaxy. Kings trembled when Kael'thor war drums thundered across the stars. But that was before the Dominion Wars, before the shame, before the breaking of the Kael'thor spirit. Now, the spires lay in ruins, twisted skeletons of blackened alloy reaching into a blood-red sky. Fires still burned in the lower cities where the enemy bombardment had not yet been extinguished. The great arena of the First Blade, where 1,000,000 warriors once stood in salute, had collapsed, its sacred flame snuffed out beneath fallen stone. High Warlord Kael'thor Dravik stood upon the shattered balcony of the Citadel of Honor, his armor dented and scorched, his long warrior's braid torn and stained by ash. In his clawed hand he held what remained of his people's history, a ceremonial war mask cracked down the center. Once a symbol of his lineage, now just a relic of a forgotten age. They have surrounded the last city. Our sensors read 12 Dominion Dreadnoughts. Came the voice of First Blade Arath, one of the last surviving champions. His voice, once booming, was reduced to a low rasp. Kael'thor did not turn his eyes, once bright with the fire of Kael'thor's sacred rage. Now reflected only the silent resignation of a leader who had nothing left to command. How many remain within the Citadel? Kael'thor asked softly. 18,000 civilians. Less than 500 warriors fit to fight, Arath replied. Less than 500. At their peak, the Kael'thor had fielded armies of billions. They had carved empires, conquered stars, and written epics in the blood of worthy foes. But when the machines of the Jar Dominion came, machines without fear, without honor, without the capacity to recognize surrender or valor, the Kael'thor traditions became meaningless. The Tsar did not care for duels or glory. They cared only for eradication. We were once the storm that reshaped worlds, Kael'thor murmured, voice a low echo, and now we are the dust carried by it. Behind him, the Citadel trembled as another distant strike landed somewhere to the east. Screams rose for a moment before being silenced by the deep, mechanical thrum of Dominion reavers. We cannot win, Arath said quietly, breaking the last unspoken rule between warriors. Kael'thor never spoke of defeat. Defeat was acknowledged only in death. We lost the war years ago, Kael'thor said, closing his fist around the broken mask until its edges cut into his skin. What remains is whether we die with honor. Silence settled between them. The wind whistled through the ruined Citadel halls like the last breath of a dying god. Then Arath spoke again, hesitant. There is one option, my warlord, a final gambit. Kael'thor turned at last, eyes narrowing. Few things could still stir his interest, fewer still his hope. In the vaults of memory our historians uncovered a record, Arath said. From the era of the Great Drift, nearly 60 cycles past, a small vessel encountered an alien. Wounded, alone, dying in the void. A minor race. Kael'thor grunted. Primitive. They were nothing then, Arath agreed. Barely united, their fleet scattered across neighboring systems. But the record states our patrol rescued this alien. They treated his injuries. They returned him to his people. And in return, he gave our captain a small object. Arath reached into a sealed pouch and held out a metal circle, simple, silver, unadorned except for a blue sphere at its center. Kael'thor stared at it, feeling a strange pulse of energy radiating from it. What is this trinket? A coin, Arath said. A token of debt. The alien said if ever the Kael'thor stood on the brink of annihilation, to broadcast a signal encoded on this coin, and his people would answer. Kael'thor's eyes hardened. We are Kael'thor. We beg no one for mercy. This is not mercy, Arath replied. This is calling in a debt of honor. At that, Kael'thor hesitated. Honor. The word struck him harder than any blade ever had. He took the coin, its surface cool against his palm. There was no inscription, no proof of power, no weapon hidden within it. Just a frequency code. The race? Kael'thor asked. They called themselves humans. The word meant nothing to Kael'thor. Another minor species forgotten in the tides of war. They had likely been conquered or gone extinct decades ago. To send this signal is to admit our failure, Kael'thor said. To refuse, Arath answered, is to let the last children of Kael'thor die in silence. Kael'thor looked out across the burning city. He could see the evacuation transports, old, damaged, unarmored, crowded with the last of his people. The jar would fall upon them within hours. His warriors would die by in them seconds. They needed to flee to nowhere. He closed his fist around the coin. Activate it, he said at last. Arath bowed his head and hurried to the signal chamber. Kael'thor remained alone, the winds of a dying world swirling around him. Within the Citadel's heart, ancient machinery awakened. A beam of white light burst from a spire, piercing the clouds and surging into space, broadcasting across every known channel and into frequencies so old most civilizations had forgotten they existed. Kael'thor stood silent, waiting. Minutes passed. Then hours. No answer came. The Dominion Dreadnoughts angled their cannons. The final bombardment began. Kael'thor closed his eyes, embracing death like a brother. Perhaps, he thought, the humans are gone. But far beyond the dying sky of Kael'thor Prime something stirred, and humanity remembered. The stars above Kael'thor burned a dull crimson through the haze of plasma fire and drifting debris. In the command spire, Kael'thor Dravik stood in eerie silence as Dominion supercarriers arched into final attack formation. Their engines flared with the pale, cold light of annihilation. "They are charging primary weapons," whispered First Blade Arath. His voice now calm as a warrior greeting death. Kael'thor nodded, straightened his back, and placed the broken war mask over his face. "Let them come," he said. "The last Kael'thor will face them standing." But as the Dominion flagship's cannons began to glow, a sharp crack split the sky. Not thunder, not weapon fire, but reality itself tearing. The heavens rippled, space folded like liquid. Then came the light. It was not the color of destruction. It was the color of dawn. Hundreds, no thousands, of vessels erupted into existence across the upper atmosphere. Massive black hulls with silver accents, sharp-edged like blades forged from stars themselves. Their surfaces shimmered with runic blue lines, pulsing like veins carrying the heartbeat of a living titan. The Dominion dreadnoughts froze in formation. Their targeting arrays went dark. Their plasma cores fizzled like dying embers. A single Terran ship materialized at the center of the fleet, dwarfing every other vessel. A mobile fortress, kilometers long, shaped with terrifying elegance. It bore the insignia of a blue sphere encircled by 3 wings. TDF, Terran Defense Fleet. The Kael'thor had called into the void, and humanity had come. A voice rolled through the comm channels, resonating not as a broadcast but as a vow. "This is Admiral Rylan Graves of the Terran Defense Fleet. To the Dominion Armada, you are trespassing on a protected world. You will stand down immediately or face terminal intervention." Kael'thor staggered back a step. The name struck him like a thunderbolt of memory. Rylan Graves, not the same human his people once saved, but his bloodline. There were legends, scattered whispers, that Graves had been the one rescued cycles ago, a single man, carried from the void, returned to his species with words of gratitude, and now his descendant stood at the helm of the most powerful war machine in galactic history. The Dominion responded with silence, then arrogant and uncomprehending. They fired. Doomlances streaked toward the Terran flagship, tearing space apart in their wake. The sky flared, then dimmed. Every Dominion weapon burst into static mid-flight. Kinetic force, plasma, antimatter, all simply ceased to exist. The Terran flagship did not move. It did not shield. It simply refused to acknowledge the concept of being harmed. "Impossible," Arath breathed. A moment later, Admiral Graves spoke again. "Rylan Graves to High Warlord Kael'thor Dravik of the Kael'thor. We have answered the call. Your people are under our protection." Kael'thor's throat constricted. His people, what little remained, stared upward in stunned disbelief as Terran ships deployed shimmering barriers over the evacuation transports. "Arath," Kael'thor murmured, voice trembling, "open a channel." The First Blade nodded and activated the link. Kael'thor spoke, forcing the weight of millennia of pride and shame into a single breath. "Admiral Graves, I am Kael'thor Dravik. By the laws of the Kael'thor, I honor the bond of ancestors, though I do not know why you have come. We are broken. We cannot pay this debt." Across the void deep within the Terran flagship TDS Invictus, Admiral Rylan Graves stood upon his command bridge. Hands clasped behind his back, he was tall, silver-templed, his eyes forged of cold fire. When he spoke, his voice carried the calm weight of destiny. "You paid it long ago. One of yours saved one of ours when we were weak. We were a scattered people, then lost, vulnerable. Who do not forget, humanity has risen, and we rise for you." Across the Dominion fleet, panic erupted. Automated defensive AIs shrieked warnings, engines overloaded. Entire ships malfunctioned as Terran forces unleashed beams of pure gravitational energy, binding space around enemy vessels like chains of light. The first salvo did not destroy, it removed. Dominion cruisers vanished from existence. Torn from time itself. No debris, just silence. Kael'thor stared in stunned disbelief. "Your weapons, they unmake reality." Graves did not respond. He had already turned to his tactical officer. "Release the Horizon Spear," he said quietly. A single Terran warship broke formation. Sleek dagger shaped with a prow that glowed with the light of a newborn star. Its core hummed with immeasurable power, the weapon known only in whispers among lesser species. It fired once, a beam of light, thin as a hair, bright as a sun, cut across the sky. Every Dominion vessel in its path disintegrated, not destroyed but converted into raw energy. The beam never even slowed as it crossed the horizon and struck the Dominion flagship head-on. The flagship imploded. Kael'thor's wounded moon trembled beneath the shockwave, but the Terran fleet stood unharmed, untouched, implacable. The Dominion Armada attempted retreat too late. Terran warships folded space around them, trapping them in stasis like flies in amber. Kael'thor watched as the impossible unfolded. His people, who had lived and died by battle, had never seen such a thing. Power without cruelty, victory without weakness. Then the comm line chimed again. "Kael'thor Dravik," said Graves, "prepare to receive Terran envoys. We are here not just to end your enemies, but to rebuild what you have lost." Kael'thor, the last warlord of a shattered people, bowed his head for the first time in his life. Not in defeat, but in reverence. And as the Terran fleet descended from the heavens like a rising dawn, every Kael'thor gazed up through the smoke and ruin and saw, not conquerors, not gods, not myths, but friends answering an ancient call, a promise echoing across time. And humanity kept it. A week had passed since the Dominion Armada was erased from Kael'thor skies. For the first time in generations, the red horizon of their world was not lit by fire and destruction, but by restoration. Human engineering vessels moved across the surface like living titans. Massive city formers descended on antigrav pillars, weaving luminous constructs from nanite clouds that danced like silver mist. Where ruins had stood, foundations rose. Where ashes lay, gardens bloomed. Kael'thor civilians, once starved and despairing, now walked in stunned silence among Terran medics and diplomats. Food synthesis stations distributed nourishment without expectation of tribute. Terran children visiting from refugee-aid ships walked beside Kael'thor younglings, laughing together under the pale light of the twin moons. For a proud warrior race who had only known conquest and vengeance, this kindness was shattering. High Warlord Kael'thor Dravik stood upon the rebuilt council promenade, watching as a Terran repair drone restored an ancient statue of the First Blade. His First Blade Arath stood beside him, shoulders no longer sagging under the weight of hopelessness. "They rebuild faster than we destroyed," Arath murmured. "They rebuild as warriors," Kael'thor replied. "Only their weapon is mercy." As if summoned by his words, the Terran flagship TDS Invictus descended through the cloud layers, its shadow stretching across the plains like the silhouette of fate itself. Shuttles emerged from its belly in perfect formation, gliding toward the Grand Hall where the renewal accord would soon be signed. This was not a surrender. It was the birth of an alliance. The doors to the hall opened and Admiral Rylan Graves entered, flanked by 2 honor guards in gleaming obsidian armor, the crest of the blue sphere upon their chests. Every Kael'thor present instinctively bowed, not out of fear but respect. Kael'thor stepped forward, standing tall in ceremonial plate, the ancestral armor of his line now reforged and polished by Terran artisans. "Admiral Graves," Kael'thor said, his voice steady, "on behalf of the Kael'thor race I offer gratitude. Words are too small a token for what you have done." The Graves inclined his head. "Honor remembers itself, High Warlord. We did only what was promised." Kael'thor nodded, then hesitated. "Tell me, Admiral, the one your people sent us long ago, the human we saved from the void, was he your kin?" For the first time since his arrival, Admiral Graves' expression softened. He drew from his coat a simple object, a coin of silver and blue, the very same coin Kael'thor had used to call them. "This," Graves said quietly, "belonged to Admiral Elias Graves, my great-grandfather. He was the one your people saved 70 cycles ago. It was his blood you carried from darkness. It was his promise we answered." A wave of murmurs swept the Kael'thor Council. Many had believed the coin a myth. Others had dismissed it as a token of a dead race. But now it pulsed with meaning, echoing across generations. Kael'thor looked at it, his eyes burning with something deeper than pride. "We saved one life," he said. Graves nodded. "And that single act reshaped humanity's destiny. When Elias Graves returned from your ship, he told us, 'The Kael'thor gave me life. Humanity must become worthy of their example.'" Kael'thor's eyes widened. "Yes," Graves said. "Humanity was fractured then, broken, still rising from the ashes of its own civil wars. But that one moment, your act of honor, gave us a path. We united. We rose. And when the stars opened, we reached for them, not to conquer but to be the shield we once lacked." Silence filled the hall like a sacred wind. Kael'thor, the last warlord of a fallen people, bowed deeply from the waist, a gesture no Kael'thor had given in thousands of years. "Then let the stars themselves be witness," he declared. "From this day the Kael'thor stand with humanity, in war and peace, in life, in death." A low hum filled the air as Terran and Kael'thor soldiers across the world echoed the ancient oath of alliance. One shield, one honor, one destiny. But harmony did not last long. As the renewal accord was signed, alarms blared across the human fleet. Graves' expression hardened, his command implant pulsed with incoming data. "An encrypted signal, not Dominion, not any known adversary. Report," Graves ordered. "Admiral," came the tactical officer's voice, "we have detected a signal signature in the outer system. It matches no known power. It is scanning us." A Kael'thor frowned. "Another enemy." A Graves shook his head slowly. "No. Something watching." On the main display, a holographic image formed a Terran space, blacker than void, ringed with purple light. A single eye, like construct, emerged, vast as a moon. It emitted no energy, simply in a voice, not spoken, but projected directly into the mind of every sentient being on Kael'thor Prime and across the Terran fleet. "T hekilan oi t kiwash, os aided. Piapar for our sesson or our sewer." A cold dread swept through Kael'thor's bones. He turned to Graves. "What is this?" he whispered. Graves answered with grim certainty. "A precursor signal," he said. "Older than any empire. Older than time as we know it." Kael'thor's fist clenched. "Why appear now?" But Graves held up the ancient coin. "Because in saving one life all those cycles ago," he said softly, "you awakened humanity's destiny, and now the galaxy has taken pulsed again." HFY Cheryl Remariine. In that moment, Kael'thor and human alike felt it. Their alliance had not ended the war. It had merely begun the true one. Kael'thor met Graves' gaze. "So be it. Let the stars judge our worth." And somewhere in the darkness beyond sight, an ancient power smiled. The galaxy had chosen its champions. The battle in orbit had ended not with silence, but with a song of roaring engines, of shields flaring like newborn stars, of two civilizations once worlds apart now moving in perfect unison. The Kael'thor had expected their final stand to be a dirge of extinction. Yet as their fleet soared beside Terran warships, their horns of battle returned not as echoes of death, but as proclamations of rebirth. From within the Grand Command deck of the Terran flagship TDS Ascendant Light, Admiral Rylan Graves stood tall, his posture the embodiment of calm authority, his gaze fixed on the great holographic display of the battlefield. Human ships now flew in coordinated spear formations with Kael'thor cruisers, their energies harmonized, their commanders linked through a neural war. Net human engineers had built in under an hour. The enemy, the synthetic scourge known as the Kael'thor constructs, was faltering. Where once their drones advanced without resistance, now they were being driven back, their cold precision disrupted by something they could not compute: courage, sacrifice, unity, and hope. On the Kael'thor command vessel, High Chieftain Cairn stood at the center of his War Council platform, surrounded by his elite guard. The glow of battle reflected in his golden eyes. Gone from his expression was the emptiness of a broken king. In its place shone the fire of a reborn warrior. Human flagship signals readiness for final assault. One of his commanders declared, voice trembling, not from fear, but they ask if we stand with them as one. Cairn drew his ancestral blade, raising it high. Then let the stars witness. The Kael'thor no longer fight for survival, we fight for a future. At that exact moment, Admiral Graves raised his hand over his heart, the highest human gesture of oath, and transmitted on all open frequencies. This is Admiral Graves to both Terran and Kael'thor fleets. We do not fight as two peoples today. We fight as the dawn-born children of the stars. Today we end the darkness. All ships, charge drives and prepare for unity strike. A single cheer erupted across thousands of channels, human and Kael'thor voices overlapping in a thunderous wave. For a moment, the galaxy itself seemed to pause, listening. The Kael'thari mothership, an artificial leviathan with a core of hyperdense quantum code, activated its extinction cannon. A beam of absolute unmaking gathered at its maw, ready to erase the allied fleets from existence. Targeting matrix locked, said a Terran officer. Kael'thor shields aligned, came the alien response. In perfect synchrony, the Terran flagship and the Kael'thor war cruiser Vorinth's flame charged into the beam's path. Their shields overlapped, forming a luminous barrier that vibrated with combined energy, technology, and tradition becoming one. The extinction beam struck, the bridge shook, lights flickered, gravity buckled. But the barrier held. Cairn roared. Graves stood unflinching. Across both fleets, countless warriors felt something awaken within them, the ancient truth that life's purpose is not dominance, but connection. With a united cry, the Dawnborn Alliance launched their spear assault. Dozens of Terran Dreadnoughts and Kael'thor blade ships converged on the mothership's core. The combined strike, energy, plasma, fury, faith, pierced the Kael'thari heart. The enemy imploded. A supernova of pure white light blossomed across the void, not in destruction, but in liberation. The machine code of the Kael'thari unraveled, their final transmission echoing not in hate, but in confusion. They had lost, not to superior force, but to something they had not understood. They had lost to unity. As the last echoes faded, silence fell over the stars, not a silence of fear, but of reverence. The surviving Kael'thor ships formed formation beside their Terran allies, not in submission but partnership. On the command deck, Admiral Graves looked up as a shimmering blue gateway formed before the fleet, a quantum portal activating from Earth, a symbol of trust. Humanity was not hiding behind their newfound power, they were sharing it. Earth itself was calling the Kael'thor home. High Chieftain Cairn, Graves said, his voice rich with meaning. The people of Earth request your presence, not as a refugee but as the honored co-founder of the Galactic Accord. Cairn's mighty head bowed, not in shame but deep respect. For centuries my people lost their way. We forgot the heart of honor. Today you have restored it. Admiral Graves, humanity has done what no conqueror or savior ever could. You have made us believe again. Together they transmitted the declaration of unity. We are no longer species divided by blood, history, or sorrow. We are dawnborn, guardians of life. And from this moment forth, no voice in this galaxy shall stand alone. The story spread across every world, through every system, how humanity, once the weakest of civilizations, rose not through domination but through compassion and unbreakable spirit. How the Kael'thor, once lost in shame, found rebirth in the fire of shared purpose. In the great hall of Earth's Ascendancy citadel, beneath banners woven from human steel and Kael'thor ceremonial silk, Admiral Graves and Chieftain Cairn placed their hands upon the eternal flame, a symbol of alliance that would burn for 10,000 years. As the flame rose, every screen across the galaxy lit with the face of Admiral Graves, his voice carrying hope into every settlement, every outpost, every heart. The era of fear is over. The future begins now. Together, and in that moment the stars themselves seemed to bow. For the galaxy had witnessed something miraculous, not the rise of an empire, but the ascension of a united destiny.